Okay, brilliant. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the BDX Summit. I'm Anna. I am the Director of Customer Solutions here at JobAdder, and I am incredibly excited to set the stage for our next fireside chat, which is your AI colleague building automations that do BD while you sleep. So joining me is the fantastic Vanessa Rath. Vanessa is a global recruitment expert. She is a trainer and a keynote speaker with nearly 2 decades of experience empowering recruiters to master talent attraction, career branding, and AI-driven strategies. Vanessa, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my second time presenting for JobAdder as part of the Recruiting Gym Massive or the Recruiting Gym cohort, and it's great to be here. So thanks for having us back.
No, the pleasure's all ours. Thank you so much. Just a reminder, everybody, that the Q&A is open and Vanessa's keen for any questions that you may have. So if you do have any whilst we're going through the session, please pop those in there and we'll try to get to them as we're going through.
Great.
Brilliant. Cool. So to kick it off, I think let's start with, I guess, the big picture. And when we're talking about AI for BD, what does that actually look like for a recruiter right now in 2026?
So it's actually such an interesting topic at the moment. I've just come back from being in the UK and Ireland, where I presented at 2 different events around how recruiters can use AI more effectively. And the questions that I was asked after both of these conferences was a lot around business development. It came up the most. And I presume it's because business development is just such a hot topic these days. Everyone's looking to expand, grow their businesses, bring in more clients. So the question is that we're using AI to do quite a few things. I mean, the first instance of how people started using large language models was generally, how do I write a new job description for this? And now it's progressed to, okay, how do we actually get to grips with AI? And the really interesting thing is when it comes to business development, the use of AI for me is not actually just to hand everything over. Business development is one of those things where it boils down to a lot of relationships and relationship building and how you interact with other human beings and how, most importantly, you build trust in this space. So AI is great, but it's great at being your, let's call it your professional assistant or your personal assistant when it comes to business development. So let me quantify that a little bit. It's not going to take over your business development, which I know a lot of recruiters are going to be sitting back now and saying, oh, well, this is not why we came to this talk. But it actually can't do it because it doesn't have the human, and humans still like to deal with humans. But what it can do is it can really help you with taking away the horrible admin. Because as I always say in my presentations, is that no one went into recruitment because they love admin. Okay, they went into recruitment because they love working with human beings, they love interacting with others, and they enjoy changing people's lives. So when it comes to using AI for business development, let it do things like your research. Let it go and research the market. Go and have a look and see what competitors are doing. Find places to send your silver medalist or your candidates who were the second choice. It's great at doing that. It's got fantastic integrations into the internet. It doesn't hallucinate as much as it used to, especially if you're asking for verifiable links. Get it to do that research for you before you do business development, because I think a lot of recruiters forget that business development isn't literally just picking up the phone and cold calling. It's the research that happens beforehand. So use AI to do the research for you. And use AI to help you to set up those email campaigns. It can help you to write them. If you give it enough information and enough context, it can even work on the personalization for you and get it to do all of that manual tasks that you really dislike doing when it comes to business development. So it's your assistant, but you are the main show. So when it comes to actually meeting with people, taking them out for a coffee, taking them out for a lunch, that has to be an in-person exercise. But AI can do all of the research and get the intelligence in place for you.
Yeah, 100%. The way I always like to think about it is about how you maximize your impact as an individual, as opposed to taking away any of that personal touch that's really important when we're talking about BD.
Absolutely.
On the research, I feel like that's a really interesting topic in itself, because the opportunity there is to really increase the quality of what you can then
Yeah.
through, right?
Absolutely. You don't go in, it's not so much of a cold call then, is it? Because
No.
you've done your research on the company, on the clients, and just to your previous point, Anna, there, I just want to highlight that for me, from a business development perspective, the sharpest tool which somebody has still is their brand. So
Yeah.
it's what are you putting out there? Where are you building a brand online? Because getting a wonderfully scripted email from someone who isn't known in the industry, you go to their LinkedIn profile, it's not really well filled out, it's out of date, it's not going to do you any favors. So the key behind business development is who are you? How well networked are you in the industry? Who are you connected to? What information are you sharing to show that you are a specialist in that space? Goes a long way before we even start the AI discussion.
Yeah, definitely. And if we're talking about sort of top of the funnel strategies, and we're thinking about, smart agencies that you think, they're doing it right, um, how are they using AI to automate that initial prospecting and that outreach that you were just referencing successfully and in the most impactful way?
So there's three main ways that I see people using AI for business development, and they're all quite similar, but they all are slightly different. So a lot of people are using AI to do their monitoring, or what we used to refer to back in the day was social listening. So, taking cues from what's happening there. So let's give you a hard and fast example. Someone in your LinkedIn network changes jobs. They then go onto their LinkedIn profile, they change jobs, and you get an alert to say this person has changed companies or this person has an anniversary here. That is what we refer to as social listening. Now, that is a great opportunity, especially if there's been a job change. This person could have been your client at a previous company, they've now moved to a competitor. Send them a message, congratulate them, and ask how you could potentially go and add assistance in their new role. So that is one of the key ones. The second way is setting up some kind of an alert, and I've actually built these myself using ChatGPT, is setting up an alert that runs twice a week. And what it does is it goes onto the internet and it looks at company websites that have career pages. And what it looks for is it looks for companies that have advertised new roles in the 3 or 4 days before the advert ran previously. So say, for example, there's a company in London and suddenly it's looking for 10 new software engineers. You'd get the alert and it says these people are now looking. Then you know that hiring is happening. It's a good time for you to get in touch with that organization. So that can be run with a simple paid for ChatGPT account. You just need to run a recurring report. So after my last training session through the recruiting gym, we were looking at setting these up. The third way of using AI is actually linked to what JobAdder does, and that is using your CRM system. So you have loads of data in your CRM system, and we all know that people use their CRM systems with varying degrees of depth and professionalism and efficiency. But if you were to say to go and do a search in your CRM and say, who was our client that we made the most placements with in 2022? Go and craft an email to them. We want to reignite the account, and let's go and have a look at what we could be doing there. Or who haven't we been in touch with for the last 6 to 12 months? So when I always say this and I say get AI to draft an email or draft a message, it is very much the drafting, because there should always be a human in the loop. There should always be a human set of eyes before it goes out. And on any of these systems that write emails for you, or you can now connect your Microsoft 365 to your Claude, to your ChatGPT, I never allow it to send emails. Always put it into your drafts and then go and cast an eye over it and give it your final personalization. Make it sound like you is a really important thing to note here.
Yeah, definitely. And on that, that's definitely the approach that we've taken at JobAdder with our product
Yeah.
roadmap. And what we've introduced is making sure that there is always that human element, and we're not, automating and sending out stuff that doesn't need to get sent out, for example.
Exactly. And that's in line, with the EU AI Act, is that there always has to be a human oversight,
Exactly.
because it still can come up with some pretty hairy things. I was going through a couple of mine while I was traveling because I do use AI to answer some of my emails, and some of the drafts that I read, I thought, no, I can't send this out. This has completely missed the mark.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We've got a question actually, which kind of links. I mean, you've mentioned a couple of platforms already, but somebody's asking specifically whether you have any, and you may not, that you feel like are the strongest specifically to use for those research purposes.
So for me, when it comes to talent sourcing, I'm a fan of using Grok as a large language model. There are obviously paid for tools that you can use. I also like ChatGPT if you give it a good prompt. So for me, prompt engineering is everything when using large language models to get the results that you're looking for. Those would be the two that I would start with doing the research, the finding the intelligence on the companies that you want to target for your BD.
Brilliant, thank you. Now you've touched on this, I feel like with a couple of your answers already, but just in case there's anything that we haven't sort of referenced, I mean, the title of the talk today is about having always on BD while you sleep. When we're talking about that day-to-day basis, is there anything outside of the areas that you've touched on already that you feel like is useful sort of tips and tricks for everybody?
Well, what is useful to know is that from a candidate perspective, candidates now have tools that are available at their fingertips, one being a site like Join Handshake. And what it does is it applies for jobs on their behalf. So while candidates are sleeping, us as recruiters are getting overloaded with ad response because it goes and it will takes whatever information the candidate has given them, their CV, maybe a link to their LinkedIn profile, maybe a little bit of a explanation about what they're looking for, and it goes and searches the web for jobs for them and then applies on their behalf. So pretty much like we want our business development to be running in the same kind of way. Candidates are doing that, which is leading to, really a huge amount of ad response that's happening on a global perspective. But from my perspective, what is nice is that if you're a recruiter and you are setting up these tools to run, and often your laptop needs to be on for them to be running, you could finish work for the day, and then get it to run a report. So say, go and have a look at the market. This is my client. I want you to go and run a competitor analysis. Sometimes these, if you get your prompt right and you give it enough information, and honestly, some of my prompts can be like 2, 3 pages long. You give it enough context of what you're looking for, it can take half an hour to run that report. So for me, the nice thing is that schedule those reports for the end of your day, get them to run. Then what I do is I just will come past my office and I'll just close my laptop for the evening. But I know in the morning those reports have run and I can start my day by going to read the report. So say for example, mine is go and analyze who has put more jobs for chartered accountants out in London over the last 2 weeks or whatever time frame I give it. When I start, it's going to give me a full report. It will not only give me the companies, it will give me their information, what I can find out from them, what is their focus area, have they been known to use agencies in the past, and I can have a really well-written report where before it might have taken me half an hour to go and do this research myself. So I think it's what we say about that is that, we still need a human in the loop, but get the reports and everything running as much as possible so that you can start each day with a fresh new report to work on.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about prompts, actually, that's something that I feel like a lot of people struggle with. And it's definitely conversations
Yeah,
I've had with people of they feel like they don't get the most out of the tools because they don't know how to
yes,
prompt.
I hear it all
So,
the time.
yeah, from someone who is an expert in it, I mean, what would your advice be for people that are really struggling with that and trying to get better at prompting those tools and getting the most out of them?
So what I see in a lot of the workshops that I run, and the people that I'm training is that they're prompting, they're all horrified when I tell them that the prompts that they are using are incredibly poor. Because a lot of people are going to these very powerful large language models and using them as Google. So a lot of them are horrified to hear that their prompts of 15 words or less is actually a really bad prompt because you must expect a very generic result that comes from that. So the prompting for me is key. It has to be over 15 words and you have to give it as much context as possible. So I always think to myself, if I'm working on a project, I want to set the LLM, whichever one I'm using, up for success. So I make sure that I give it enough context. And how I do that often is I use the voice functionality. So they generally all come with a microphone. I speak to it because as a recruiter, we're much better at verbal communication than we are with writing because writing's admin. We get bored. We give up halfway through a prompt. So if you can speak to your LLMs, let them know exactly what you're looking for, then you actually do get a way better result. So for me, the main focus of the workshops that I run is literally prompt engineering because there's a lot of people that are trying out these large language models and then turning away from them and saying, "Oh, it's rubbish. I can do better myself." But it honestly comes down to the error between the chair and the laptop, which is often the person, because that prompt has to be so well written, and that in itself is an art.
Yeah, interesting. And then the other feedback that people often give is just how do we get it, say when you're getting tools to draft emails, correspondence, reports, whatever it may be, getting it to sound like you, as Vanessa, as that person who has that relationship. Any tips and tricks on that?
Yeah. And that's also another question that comes up regularly. And for me, the only way to do this is you have to start paying for your large language model. So it's not a lot. It's normally a princely sum of $20 a month. And as soon as you do that on the main ones, which are your chat GPTs, your Claude, your Gemini, Copilot, you can actually build, like ChatGPT calls it, a custom GPT. Claude calls it skills. Copilot calls it an agent. And I spend a lot of my time in my workshops explaining to people how to build these because once you do that, you can actually train it. So all of those LLMs for me actually have custom built functionality where I can go and feed in previous LinkedIn posts of mine, previous emails of mine, and say, I want you to learn how I write. And what I want you to be doing is I want you to be able to write these messages for me. I want them to sound like me, even like just updating the instructions within the LLMs itself. I mean, there's a lot to do. I think that we are all being expected to be AI professionals, but training is the key to actually getting the most out of your large language models.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it can't do stuff for you. So you need that personal branding to start off with, right? To then be able to,
100%.
yeah.
You've got to start from a position of strength, Anna. That's a great point.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to sort of data and insights and all of the wonderful things that these tools can do there. How should recruiters be using data and insights to drive that outreach and importantly get those better response rates? Because that's what we're always looking for, right? We're looking for those higher response rates.
Absolutely. So again, very good question. And one thing I want to take a step back and I want to just answer this quickly is AI works most effectively on top of structured data. And that's really important to remember. So I'm going to just highlight that and say it again. Is that generative AI works most successfully on structured data. Again, it's like your prompt. That is either really good structured data, a lot of context, or it's a really bad prompt. And exactly the same is when we are now getting AI to go and look at a data set. Structured data that is organized, that is clean, is going to give you the best results. So when it comes to data and insights using AI, all I have to say is that I hope that your CRM has got some really good, clean, structured data in it, because that is where you are going to get the best results from. So people who are, and I know that this isn't a recruiter's strong point. We all know no one likes admin, but adding notes, keeping things up to date, connecting when you chatted with a client. So for me, things that I'm seeing that work well are, we've got note takers in all of our meetings these days. It's when those notes actually go directly into client files and records and whatever it might be, because that is your most up-to-date information. So then it's easy for you to say to the AI, okay, go and have a look now. Go and have a look and see when was the last conversation? What did we talk about? Give me a list of 10 clients that I can go and reignite conversations with. Let's work together on email campaigns that we can put together. But if your data isn't structured, then the insights that you pull from there is going to be incorrect. And again, just to kind of throw the human back in the loop, is that humans form a relationship, a working relationship with other human beings, which is why, recruitment companies are always so nervous when recruiters leave, because it's not the company that holds the relationship with the clients, it's actually, each individual recruiter. So for me, it's about deciding when do you use AI and when do you use human beings, because human beings are far better at maintaining that relationship. So the personalization has to be there. But the personalization, once you have trained a large language model to write like you and sound like you, the personalization could always be added in, because there's a misconception at the moment in the recruitment industry that when you send someone an email and you actually get them, you say, if someone sends me an email and it's Dear Vanessa and my name is correct and spelled correctly, and it says, I see you currently working as the owner of the Talent Hunter, that is personalization. You've ticked a box. But that is literally not even scratching the surface. So it's knowing when to up your personalization, but use the data that you have. So it's easier to up your personalization.
Yeah, 100%. And on clean data, I mean, it's the same with everything, right? And the same as if you're trying to get the most out of your tools, trying to get the most out of your CRM, the most important thing is making sure that your data is clean. My team see it all the time because they oversee the implementations and data migration. So often people will come over to JobAdder and one of their main complaints is their data is a mess because they haven't looked after it. And that's something that we help them with during that journey, but it's really important that afterwards they stay on top of that as well, because like you said, you can't then build on that if the foundations aren't there. And the foundations really are, is that data and making sure that that's as accurate as possible.
Absolutely. So my favorite saying is that let AI handle your task, let humans handle the trust. So
Yeah.
the agencies that are really winning out there and being really successful with AI are the ones that are letting their recruiters use their energy and their strengths when it comes to being with humans, relationships, being on the phone, being on video calls, being out in person, going to events, those kind of things, while the AI is doing the tasks in the background. And for me, that is the best combination of the way that we should be using our recruiters, because that's what they're good at.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat now, I think, with a bit of AI tool fatigue, which I can definitely empathize with.
Me
And the
too.
question is, there seems to be so many AI options out there now. Are there any that you would recommend for BD specifically? Outside of CRMs, for example, looking at BD specifically.
So, and I'm not too sure how to add this into our conversation over here, but because we haven't got a chat functionality, but I have put together a list of tools that
Oh,
people can use with regards to AI, because I talk about suffering from AI fatigue. I've probably met with about 120 AI vendors. I've got a couple of meetings this afternoon and reviewed all of their tools. And if they're really good, I've put them on a website, which is a good website. So you can either send me a message on LinkedIn or connect with me and I can send it to you. But basically, it is a set of tools of the ones that I believe are the best ones out there. And there is a section there for business development tools. Or alternatively, you could go to Google and you could just type in Vanessa Roth tried and tested AR tools. So Vanessa Roth tried and tested AR tools, and it should pop up because it's a website that's available out there free for everyone.
oh, brilliant. I think probably we can look at getting that sent out to people afterwards as well. And that sounds really
Perfect.
useful.
Yeah. Happy to share. Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, just conscious of time. Also, if anybody does have any other questions, please pop them in the chat. But just to sort of finish on, and I guess the sort of summarize on a few of the points that we've discussed today, Vanessa, if we're looking at it, as a whole, where do you think AI adds the most value in BD? And then also I'm interested to hear, and again, we've talked a little bit about this in terms of like personalization and making sure that everything's accurate, but where does it fail and where does it fall down?
Okay, so where it's adding the most value is doing things a lot quicker than what we can do. So basically, keeping a finger on the pulse, looking to see when people are changing jobs, who's just got funding, who's just gone through a layoff round, who's hiring a lot of staff. Like that can be put in front of you really quickly instead of, waiting for it to hit the papers or the news, a little bit later. So that would be it. It's the speed that we can get all of this information. Where it's really falling down when people are still using the same kind of generic emails that have been used forever to try and do mass business development. I would rather see more targeted business development. So, go and find 5 to 10 companies, focus on those, find the right people, send them a personalized message. Because unfortunately, what AI has done is it's allowed a lot of people to generate a lot of content, also known as AI slop, that can be dished up and out to a lot of people. And what it ultimately does is put companies in a bad light. That they keep being spammed and they don't know who these people are, and that's the downside of it, is that suddenly everyone can generate a lot of content, but is it always being used in the right direction? And the relationship has to be there first. They have to know you, which is why we go back to what I was talking about, the personal branding piece and making sure your brand is top of mind all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just on that, one of the things that seems to be cropping up more and more is, you have now people who have been early adopters and who are very well versed in using all of these different tools and prompting correctly, and they have all of this expertise at their fingertips. And then you have other people within teams who really are very early on in their journey of adopting all of these different tools. So I think we've got a couple, literally 2 minutes. So I could talk about this for a long time, but any advice for people who are trying to make sure that, how do we drive a whole team's mentality to improve their overall usage, or even at a company level? That's I feel like a really tricky thing at the moment, where you just have such different levels.
Yeah. Absolutely, because some people are really interested in AI and are doing their own research and, charging ahead with it, where some people are still burying their heads in the sand because they think it's going to take their jobs. And I found that with the teams that I'm training. I think that's what it has to boil down to, is it comes down to training and change management and, putting a stake in the ground and saying, right, this is it. This is the LLM that we're paying for. If it's a big enterprise, it's normally Copilot, or smaller companies seem to be using Claude a lot more these days. But this is what we're using, and this is the training in order to be able to use it correctly. And this is it. We got to make this work because it's incredibly powerful, and it really is something that can add huge amounts of value if used correctly.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you, Vanessa. That was really, really insightful.
Pleasure.
I hope
Thank you.
everybody found that really useful as I did.